Hello and welcome again to a programme all about sauces. And what I'm going to try and do today is convince you that you don't need any of those packet sauces or instant gravy mixes or meat cubes, anything like that, but that you can make them yourself very easily and quickly. And let's hope we can do that. First, I want to show you a few sauces. I've got here in front of me number one, which is a bolognese sauce, which tastes much better homemade than anything that ever came out of a tin. Next door here, I've got Cumberland sauce. Now that's made with port and red currant jelly, orange and lemon rind, and it's lovely with gammon or some game. Here I've got a concentrated Provençal sauce, which is made with tomatoes, strongly reduced to get extra flavour, and I think that's very nice with bangers. This one is very popular with children, as well as adults, because it's a thick butterscotch sauce, and that's absolutely lovely, poured over ice cream with bananas and nuts and things. This one's an avocado sauce. That's made with pureed avocado and soured cream. It's nice with fish or for dipping bits of raw vegetables in. And then here I've got a béarnaise sauce. This is an egg and butter sauce, and we'll be doing something similar to that later on. Now, all the recipes for those sauces, and lots more besides, are in the book that goes with the programme. But first of all, I want to show you a revolutionary way of making a classic white sauce. I say it's a revolutionary way because it's so easy that it's even easier than making it from a packet. And all you do is put everything together in the saucepan. First of all, 3/4 of an ounce of flour. Then you put in 3/4 of an ounce of butter. Then you pour in 1/2 pint of milk, so it all goes in together. Then you just put the heat on and take a whisk. I think a balloon whisk is the best sort to use for this. And then with the heat on, you just start to gently melt the butter and whisk the flour into the milk. And the nice thing about this is that you don't have all that hard work of adding the milk bit by bit and stirring. It's just all very easy. It's just a little gentle whisk like this with a balloon whisk. Now what happens when you want to make a sauce is you want to thicken the liquid. And I'd like to explain to you now what's happening inside that whilst I'm mixing. The little granules of flour, once they come in contact with the heat, they start to expand, and they go on expanding. And then when the sauce comes almost to the boil, they burst. And then when they burst, the starch is released and the sauce is thickened. So there we have it. It's started to thicken now. And there's only one important point for me to tell you, and that is if you're going to make a sauce by this all-in-one method, you must start off with the liquid absolutely cold, because if you put hot liquid to flour, then it does go lumpy. But throughout the whole of sauce making, I don't want you ever to worry about lumps. You shouldn't get lumps if you follow the instructions, but if you do, then just use a sieve, because that's what sieves are made for. Now I just want to enrich this sauce. I've got my basic all-in-one white sauce here, which is a good pouring consistency, but I'm going to make that into parsley sauce, which is very useful for lots of things. I think it's nice to serve with fish, and it's also very nice, I think, with a boiled bacon joint. So I've got some parsley in there, a couple of tablespoons. Now I'm going to add a bit of lemon juice, just to add a bit of sharpness. And obviously it's very important to add seasoning, salt and pepper. But before you add these ingredients, there is one point I want to make, and that is sauces must be cooked. You must cook them for at least 6 minutes before you add the other ingredients. I have to pretend on this programme because of time, but always cook sauces because the flour tastes very raw when you first add it. Now the other thing is just another knob of butter, because that'll make it taste buttery. And if you've got it handy, a tablespoon of double cream would be very nice in there. And if you haven't got it handy, just a bit of top of the milk. So 2 important rules. One is, in the all-in-one method, start off with cold liquid, and in all sauce making, cook the flour. Cook the flour for at least 6 minutes, just so that you get rid of that raw flour taste. Well, that's what I call a revolutionary method of making a white sauce, because honestly, a child could do it. That's all-in-one sauce, and of course you can use lots of other flavours. Now I want to show you a little bit about the classic way of making a sauce, which is the roux method. And for this, I'm going to make a leek sauce. Let's put the heat on. Now for the roux method, you start off with the same amount of butter, 3/4 of an ounce, but because this is going to end up as leek sauce, I've got a small leek here that's been chopped, and that's been sweated in the butter to just soften a little bit. Now I'm going to add some flour, 3/4 of an ounce again, and mix that into the butter. Now this mixture is called a roux in classic cookery, but I'm never going to call it a roux in our cookery course, because I'm just going to say when a recipe calls for an ounce of butter and an ounce of flour mixed together, that's what I'll say. But in classic cookery, that's what it's called. Then this time, you add the milk bit by bit. And you keep stirring. As you add the milk, you keep stirring to make it smooth. I've got the heat a bit high there, so I'll turn that down. And then just go on adding the milk bit by bit. And you could have started off with other ingredients here. You could have had cucumber, chopped celery for celery sauce, or a nice buttery onion sauce would be very nice to serve with some lamb in the winter, I think. When you haven't got any mint, it's nice to serve onion sauce with lamb. So this is the classic way of making a sauce. But I think the other way is probably the easier. But both are easy. This is just a bit harder work. Just keep on stirring as you add the liquid, get rid of the lumps, and go on and on until you've got a smooth sauce exactly the same way as the first one I showed you. Well, they're both very simple. I'd just like to say one thing now, and that's about a bechamel sauce. Sometimes a recipe calls for a bechamel sauce. That comes from classic cookery as well. And for that, the liquid you use needs to be infused with other flavours. So you start off, let's imagine you're going to use half a pint of milk. Well, not imagine, we are. Then the other flavours you add are a piece of celery, piece of carrot, piece of onion. Then you put in half a bay leaf, a blade of mace. Mace, if you're not familiar with it, is the outer casing of a nutmeg, and it has a nutmeg flavour, but more subtle. And then some peppercorns. I've got half a dozen peppercorns. Now, what you do to infuse those flavours into the milk is you bring it up to the boil and then leave it aside for a few hours to really absorb the flavours. And when you've done that, if it's absolutely cold, you can use it to make the all-in-one method, or if it's still warm, then you use the classic roux method. But either way, that is the way to make a bechamel sauce. When we move on to pasta recipes, that'll be useful for putting on lasagna or cannelloni or something like that. And you can make a bechamel sauce with not all milk. You can use veal stock or chicken stock if it's to be served with either of those things. Now I want to show you what I think's a very important sauce, and that's good old-fashioned gravy. And I want to show you how to make it the proper way with meat juices and no nasty packets of things. Well, to make gravy, we needed to cook some meat, so I'll get that out of the oven first. Here we've just got half a leg of lamb, just to give us the right sort of meat juices. So we'll transfer that onto a plate at the side there, and that's ready to rest before it can be carved. And now the first thing you do is you take your gravy, your meat roasting tin, and this should be a good solid one, over to some direct heat. And then before you turn the heat on, you spoon off the excess fat into a bowl. And this excess fat that you're spooning off here will be dripping, and that'll be nice to use if you've got any leftover lamb and you want to make rissoles, then you can use that to fry them in, which will give them an extra nice flavour. Now, what you can see here are little bits of onion these little bits of very dark caramelised onion. I put a few slices of onion in, and this gives me a good colour for the gravy. If you don't like the flavour of onion, you can leave it out and use gravy browning. There's nothing wrong with using gravy browning, it's only caramelised sugar. Now the first thing you do is you organise some stock. Now what I use if I'm doing Sunday roast is the potato water that I blanch the potatoes in before roasting. But you can use homemade stock, meat stock, but I wouldn't advise you to use a meat cube because I find that stock cubes have a contrary flavour. But you can use water. If you've got nothing at all and you don't want to use water, I'll show you a way to make what I call instant stock. And that is you measure out some hot water, put in half a teaspoon of Worcester sauce, and then put in about a dessert spoon of mushroom ketchup. And mushroom ketchup you might have to hunt around for. It is available at specialised food shops and delicatessens, but you might have to hunt around for it. But there you've got instant stock, and in my opinion, that isn't contrary to the flavour of the meat like some of these stock cubes are. Now, so you turn the heat on under the roasting tin, and then the first thing you do is sprinkle in some flour. Slightly less quantity of flour than you would use for a white sauce. And you just blend that flour until you've soaked up the juices. In fact, I'm going to use a little bit more there, just to really soak up all those juices. Now don't worry about lumps, because you won't get any lumps. Fat blends itself into flour very, very easily, as long as you keep using, I think I need the heat a bit lower. As long as you keep using circular movements, the only way you'd get lumps is if the phone rings. And if it does, well, leave it, go away and sieve the lumps out. But as long as you just go round and round with circular movements like that, you won't have any lumps. Then, just the same way as if you were making a sauce, you add a little bit of stock and you carry on. Circular movements, getting all those nice crusty bits from round the edges, which gives a lovely flavour. If you don't want the onion in the gravy, you can see this is making it a nice brown colour. Again, you can strain it or sieve it. So you carry on like that, and provided you just keep going round with your spoon in circular movements, you won't ever have any problems with lumps. So just carry on. Bit more liquid. Now, how you like the gravy is entirely up to you. If you like a very thin gravy, then obviously you need in the end to add more liquid. And if you like a thick gravy, less. I'll give you one tip, and that is if you accidentally put too much liquid in and the gravy looks too thin, then the thing to do is to let it bubble and reduce, and then the steam will evaporate and it'll reduce down to a thicker consistency again. Another important point, I think, when you're making gravy is to taste it and season it. I do think, a well-seasoned gravy is important. So carry on like that till you get the consistency you want, and then season it. If you've got any meat juices on the plate that you've got the meat on, then you can add the meat juices to it and before serving, and then just put it into a warm gravy boat, and I think that's the most delicious gravy ever, and you can see really how easy it is. Well, now I want to show you the sauce that the French claim is the one and only sauce the British have. I don't agree with them. And that's custard. But this is going to be real proper custard. I think packet custard's very good, but real proper custard is very, very special. So I want to show you how to make that. And you start off with half a pint of double cream. It's quite extravagant, but worth it, I think. And you put the double cream in a saucepan, turn the heat on, and bring the cream up to boiling point. Then while you do that, you mix in a basin 3 egg yolks, about a dessert spoonful or a tablespoonful of caster sugar, depending on what sort of sweet tooth you have. Mix that into the egg yolks. Then you add some vanilla essence, a couple of drops of vanilla essence, And a tip here is, do try and buy proper, pure vanilla essence. There are quite a lot of synthetic ones on the market and they're not so nice, so hunt around, try and get some pure vanilla essence. Or, if you've got the time and the inclination, you can actually use the real thing, and that's a vanilla pod, which you can buy at specialised food shops. You pop that in with the cream, bring it up to the boil, let it infuse for a little while, and you'll get the vanilla flavour in that way. Then you can wipe it and use it again, so it's not, it's quite an economical thing. Now we're going to do a little bit of cheating, and that is, we're going to add a teaspoonful of corn flour to this mixture, because egg yolk sauces have a tendency to curdle, and this will ensure that it won't curdle if you add your teaspoonful of corn flour. And I'm sure lots of chefs would be horrified at this, but I think if it makes life easier, and I can't really taste any difference, then I think it's worth taking that precaution. Once the cream comes up to the boil, which it is about to do, you pour it onto those egg yolks, and then pour it back into the saucepan the same way as you would if you were making custard from a packet. It goes back in the saucepan, and then it comes, grab a wooden spoon, comes up to the boil, and then as it comes back up to the boil, it will thicken. Now ideally, you shouldn't have the heat too high at this stage because you don't want to boil it too fiercely. And if you do boil it too fiercely, you'll find that it will show signs of curdling. Start off with a wooden spoon, finish off with a balloon whisk, the same as we did with the other sauces. Now the ideal thing is to dream a bit and do it slowly, but if you're in a hurry and you're overheating it, it will show signs of curdling. So I'm going to pour it quickly into a bowl, like that, and hope that you can see that it's showing signs of curdling on the top. There we are. It has separated a bit, but because of that magic ingredient, the corn flour, all you have to do is just rapidly cool it, and it'll go completely smooth again. And if you want to cool it quickly, if you're even more hurried than I am, then you can just dunk it in another bowl of cold water and it'll cool down very rapidly and it'll become velvety smooth. And it'll taste absolutely out of this world. Now, once you've made a proper custard, what I think is nice to do with it is to make a good old classic English trifle. Now, what I've done here is I've got sponge cakes spread with jam and soaked with sherry. I've got raspberries, bananas, half a pint of custard, the way we've just made it, and then on the top, half a pint of whipped cream and some toasted flaked almonds. And that is rather an extravagant trifle, but well worth it, I think you'll agree. Nice for a special occasion or a dinner party. Well, now I've got one more sauce to show you, but I've invited a friend of mine, John Tovey, to come along and show us that. But first of all, I want to show you on film where John Tovey comes from.
This is the famous Miller Howe Hotel up in the English Lakes, which is run by my friend John Tovey. Whenever I lack inspiration, I always pop up here, because one of the problems about being a cook is that you need to spend time with other cooks occasionally, to get new ideas and recharge the batteries. John's created a restaurant that's quite unique, and people come from all over the world to eat here. I've spent many happy hours in this kitchen because John's particular brand of originality is that he never tires of trying new ideas. To eat at the Miller Howe is almost a theatrical experience, with 5 courses, beautiful wines, and a stunning view of the lake outside.
Well, hello, John, and welcome to the cookery course.
Hello, Delia.
Trouble with you and me is we do sort of take shortcuts every now and again.
Yes, we do. Well, there's nothing wrong with them if you end up with the classical sauce which you're going to serve to people and they enjoy eating it. And
This is going to be a quick way to do hollandaise.
The classical French hollandaise. A lot of French chefs will be throwing up their hats and throwing down their tea towels when they see the way we're going to do it. We're going to do it normally. They take a copper bowl and they put the egg yolks in and they whisk and whisk and whisk for about 20 minutes.
And it's hard work.
Ours is going to be done in 3 minutes, but better still, it won't curdle. In the French food mixer here, I've got the 3 egg yolks with a pinch of salt, half a teaspoon of caster sugar, and if you don't have the luxury of one of these newfangled machines, any blender can, you can use any blender.
Liquidizer.
Any liquidizer, any blender. Give it just a quick, flip of the wrist, it's away. In one pan there, we've got the wine vinegar, and then 1 tablespoon, and we're going to add 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice, and fetch it right up to the boil quickly.
Now that's white wine vinegar.
White wine vinegar, that's right. You can use, if you're going to make a quick béarnaise sauce, you can use tarragon vinegar and various other vinegar. You use the garlic vinegar if you like.
Or red wine vinegar if you only had that.
Yes, it doesn't matter. Here we've got the 6 ounces of butter which we want heated, and you must make certain that both ingredients are quite hot when you put them into the egg yolks. You can see now that there's the vinegar and the wine. Lemon juice, yes, coming up to the boil, bubbling away. I'm going to switch on the machine and I'm going to pour it. Now the only thing you've got to remember, Delia, is you must pour slowly and evenly. And it's most important to have a saucepan with a lid like this. If you haven't got a saucepan like this, which in other words the straight-sided one, it's more difficult because sometimes it spills not only over the edge, but it goes in much quicker. You want to do it slowly.
If it goes in too quickly, then
you'll have a
you're
thinner
in trouble.
sauce. Yes, you'll have a much thinner sauce.
Right, I've got
There
the
we
butter
are.
hot for you.
Good, good, good. There we are, 6 ounces of butter being poured in, once again, slowly and evenly. Now, I'm going to take all the salt in as well. The machine's taking all the work, doing all the work for you. That's what machines are for.
And you've got a bit of time to dream.
Yes, well, you can see what you might want to flavour it differently. You can put Calvados pureed apples in. You can put puree of watercress.
Oh, that would be nice.
That's nice with fish. Cold fish. You can put garlic in, more garlic in. You can put tomatoes in.
What do you like to serve hollandaise with?
Oh, I like to serve it with some cream of chicken, breast of chicken. It's absolutely delicious. It's nice with fish soufflés. It's extremely nice with any form of kind of baked fish.
Quite nice with vegetables, cauliflower.
Oh, yes. Extremely nice. And there we are, finished, the sauce finished quite quickly. A nice golden sauce, which we're going to pour into this bowl. And
It
as
does
you
have
can
a
see,
lovely buttery flavour too.
smells
doesn't it?
lovely. Just smell it as it comes out.
Well, I've got
There we
some
are.
artichokes here, which we can dip the leaves into in a minute.
Too true. There we are. Hollandaise. Quick.
Well, I hope a lot of people will benefit from that because it certainly is a beautiful sauce made very quickly and very easily. Thanks,
Right.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Delia.
Well, that's all about sauces. Next time we're going to be quite exotic and talk all about spices. So I hope you'll come back and join me then. Till then, bye-bye.